At Lowe's, this Veterans Day and every day, verified military members, veterans, and their spouses get automatic silver status in My Lowe's Rewards with free standard shipping, plus 10% off eligible purchases with no annual limit. It's one way we honor and give back to those who have served and still do. Learn more now at lowes.com/military. 10% discount can't be combined with another offer. Exclusions, terms, and conditions apply. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
And now it's time for No Pucks Given with Dan Kingerski of Pittsburgh Hockey Now. Penguin Scoops locker room buzz and straight-up analysis. No fluff, all hockey. Now, here's Dan.
And it's time to go live. Hi, I'm Dan Kingerski on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now platforms. Trying to get rid of myself here. Oh, I see what's happening. I'm actually doing two different screens here. And one is landscape, one is portrait for Facebook. Aha! I got it. Now I'm going to hide that, so I'm just here talking to myself a little bit. So here's the deal. This is the Penguins live chat. I am in Stockholm. It is now after 6 p.m. So cheers. This is an Eriksberg lager. They make their lagers really dark and big here. Ooh, see that? I will be imbibing through the show because, well, I've been up since 3:30, 4 a.m. I actually don't have jet lag, which is awesome. And I know it's only noon back east, so we've got lots more time. Although, in theory, I should actually go to sleep in a few hours. We'll get into it. Here's what's on the live chat. We will talk a bit about the Penguins' defense. Starting with Harrison Brunik. We got more on the Penguins' plan for Brunik and what they're doing with Harrison while he is out of the lineup. I'm happy to say it's a PHN exclusive. So there's that. We'll talk about Ryan Graves as well and how I think Graves sort of changes the equation. Also, Connor Clifton changes the equation too. Erik Karlsson doesn't change any equations, at least in terms of personnel. Certainly changes the equation in terms of the Penguins' success. So since we're in Sweden, although Karlsson humorously pointed out, listen, reporters drive me nuts, probably more so than you, because they're my brethren and sisters, and they drive me nuts when they just get on like a micro topic and think the players want to talk about it. So Karlsson, gloriously in the press conference yesterday, since all of the Swedish media wanted to talk to Erik Karlsson, they bring him out to like the media room. He's at the podium, and he's like, well, contrary to what a lot of the media think, not all people from Sweden live in Stockholm. So, yeah, I mean, people are like, oh, where should I go to dinner and all of this? And he's like, I'm not from Stockholm. He's like from 6 hours away. And, you know, it'd be like asking, you know, me for dinner recommendations in Los Angeles. I've been there. Anyway, so we'll talk about Erik Karlsson in relation to head coach Dan Muse. I think there's a bit to unpack there. Not just with Brunik, but also Karlsson. And the Penguins keep squandering these dominant performances. I'd say in 3 of the last 4 games, they certainly should have won. They won 1 of those. And they've lost 3, although the shootouts have not been their thing. And I know you're going to bring up Chris Letang. Maybe I should do that to Chris Letang first, because I know you're going there. I can feel it. So we're going to do all of that on the live chat. And I probably will burp at some point, too, because this beer is really good, but it's heavy. The question will be if I kind of, you know, burp in everyone's face or if I'm able to catch it in time. Here was dinner, or at least a snack to dinner. The Estella sour cream and onion chips and Malibu chocolate. It's actually pretty good. The Schweizernot. Took me 10 minutes to open that chocolate bar. I kid you not. Then I remembered it's Switzerland that's famous for chocolate, not Sweden. And I also it's upset me. I won't be able to get to the Saab Museum in Trollhättan. That's like 4 hours away. It's literally on the other coast of Sweden. It's straight west of Stockholm. But yeah, 4 hours away. And I love my Saabs. Okay, so let me get into. I know I brought up all those topics. Let's dive into the Erik Karlsson thing, or the Chris Letang. We're going to start with Chris Letang first. Before you get there, I'm going there. It's been a little bit frustrating for me, and I don't intend to insult anybody. It has been 60 years, just about, since Pittsburgh got an NHL team. And it still kind of boggles my mind that some people still think that hockey or coaching hockey is like 1960s high school football. Hold them accountable. That'll change Chris Letang at 38 years old. I mean, come on. Do you really think, listen, Chris Letang has had some ghastly, awful, brutal, horrendous, awful, terrible, what are you thinking type turnovers in the last couple of weeks. That follows the first several weeks of the season in which his play really was subpar to begin with. Now that he's elevated, he's making some pretty brutal mistakes. That turnover in New Jersey was just, wow, bad. And I get fans going, do something about it, Dan Muse. Do something. Honestly, though, do you really think at 38 you're going to change Chris Letang's game? Second of all, do you think he's walking in the locker room like, la, 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 I played great, guys. What happened to you? No, of course, you don't have to hold him accountable. That's a given. He's accountable. There's no such thing as unaccountable in this scenario. There's fan frustration, but do you expect a head coach to react like a fan? Throw sticks on the ice, flip tables, kick the bench, and excoriate Letang publicly? Do you really think that's going to happen because that's what you're feeling? No. Come on. Stop. Chris Letang and those types of turnovers, all part of the same package. It's all baked into the casserole at this point, and you're not going to change it. If you scratch Chris Letang at any game in the near future, do you think he's going to be like, oh, geez, I guess I shouldn't have made that turnover, huh? I guess I'll double think or think twice next time. Come on. If you really believe that, you're a zealot, or you need a cranial extraction from a certain cavity. The bottom line is, no, Chris Letang very well might find himself scratched at some point this season because his play really has been inconsistent up and down and not always above board. He's been through a lot in his career. At 38, a lot of hard miles, health problems, and all of that. You might get into a situation with this crazy compressed schedule where a scratch is kind of necessary. But you don't embarrass a player. You don't do those things. No coach is going to do that. It's not because Dan Muse found Mike Sullivan's little diary or how-to manual in the desk. It's not like the Resolute desk with a little hidden compartment, that all the Penguins coaches share secretly. And it says, never scratch Chris Letang, don't hold him accountable! ! Come on now. Be a little bit, learn a little bit about the culture, the game, all of those sorts. And I made the comparison. Have you ever seen Erik Karlsson scratched? Noah Dobson, Brent Burns, who actually makes more turnovers than Erik Karlsson statistically, or they're about the same most years? No, you haven't. You don't see those high-flying defensemen, even when they're older, get scratched to hold them accountable. So that's my little Chris Letang diatribe and rant. So if I see that on Twitter, it's the fastest way to get muted. And if you keep going and you just won't stop, you just get blocked. Because I don't have time in my life to keep explaining the same thing over and over. Yes, Chris Letang probably could be scratched because there's no longer the high-end play that buttresses the mistakes and some of the low-end play. At this point in his career, the high end, the ceiling, has come down quite a bit. I don't know if it's permanent. I don't know if, since he didn't play hockey for quite a while last season and into the summer, I don't know if he's still ramping up or warming up. And I haven't asked him, one, because, what's he going to say? Two, I don't think he would really know if there's another gear. I'm sure he would like to be back to a 60, 70-point defenseman, but I think that would be too difficult of a question to answer, for him anyway. He's a contemplative sort, by the way. If you think he doesn't know he's made some mistakes, then you're kind of being a bit obtuse about the situation. So that's the Chris Letang deal. I will get to some of your questions. Let's talk about Erik Karlsson as well. I could have sworn I talked to Erik Karlsson about Dan Muse's system. Although when I went to write the story today, I searched through all of my recordings, video, audio, deleted files, everything. I couldn't find it. So it must have been when I wandered over for just one of those sorts of casual chats. But I did talk to Ryan Graves about Dan Muse's system. That was actually on the, recorded and on the record. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe I, got them a little bit mixed up. But what Graves actually shocked me when he was like, well, in Dan Muse's system, we have more latitude, more skating. They don't want us to be at this spot or that spot. And I always kind of thought Mike Sullivan's system was hard on the defensemen because they did have to be, moving around, certainly much more than other systems. And I always think of Bruce Cassidy's system, which literally put like two gargoyles by the net, and they kept it clean. That's one of the reasons they won the Stanley Cup in 23, because it just fit their team and system, it just all fit perfectly. So to hear Graves say how much more skating latitude there was interesting. And it does, I saw the Driz here. He was waiting for me today. I know it's noon or 12:20 back east. Driz was waiting on us. And here's his question, which I'm just going to roll it all into this talk here. How much do you think certain systems positively or negatively affect players? I'm thinking specifically about Erik Karlsson and to a lesser degree, Ryan Graves. I didn't even see the Graves part, Driz, so yeah, we're touching on it. Is this somehow an indictment on Mike Sullivan? Well, I don't think it's an indictment on Sullivan. Clearly, he had a lot of success. Chris Letang, certainly throughout his career with Mike Sullivan, didn't not put up points. Certainly wasn't he was never not involved in the offense under Sullivan, so... but there certainly was an incongruence with Erik Karlsson and Mike Sullivan. Whatever it was. If there is an indictment, and again, I'm not saying there is, I'm just saying if there was maybe a point of contention, it's that I never felt in 2 years of talking to Erik Karlsson and, nitpicking or actually not nitpicking, but asking about small details of this or that. And the cumulative effect of those conversations over a couple of years certainly gave me the impression that Karlsson never felt like the system empowered him. He never felt like it was built for him, or he never felt like he was a big part of it. I always attributed that to him feeling like he needed to get the puck off his stick. That was part of Mike Sullivan's system. Get puck, move it to your star centers. It's not exactly a dumb system, right? If a coach said that with Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and the talent the Penguins had for most of a decade, well, that would make sense. Now with Dan Muse, the way he's empowered defensemen, good Lord, the work Ryan Graves is putting in recently. I mean, Ryan Shea, Parker Wotherspoon, Eric Carlson, all of these defensemen are playing some of their best hockey. I can't speak to Ryan Graves saying it's the best hockey of his career over the last several games because, A, it's a small sample size, and B, I didn't really pay a lot of attention to Ryan Graves in New Jersey or Colorado. So I really can't tell you if the last few games have been, towards the top of his career. I can say certainly they've been easily the best of his Penguins career. And I can say this season, Eric Carlson has consistently been brilliant. Sure, he makes mistakes. You're going to get that. It is a game of mistakes. And especially when you're Carlson, sometimes you're fighting your second nature, trying to do too much and all those sorts of things, and mistakes are going to happen. Yada, yada, yada. Muse's system is certainly helping the defenseman. I think the evidence is overwhelming. I did ask Muse after, was it the LA game or the Capitals game? I forget when I asked Muse. I mean, listen, this season has been just a giant gelatinous blur for me. I mean, there are days I feel like I'm swimming in like a pool of Jell-O. Just everything sort of, nothing feels good physically. You're just kind of fighting through motions, everything. And that's, well, because we've had 3 long road trips, counting this one already. Let me have a little more Carlson, or what's this? Eriksberg lager. So, cheers, Jens. Yeah, the schedule hasn't been easy and all of that, but Carlson has been crisp. And, when I asked Muse, he's like, well, yeah, I mean, he kind of gave me the, duh answer, but it was one Mike Sullivan always seemed to not want to give. And so it's kind of funny, maybe a dichotomy of the coaches.
At Lowe's, this Veterans Day and every day, verified military members, veterans, and their spouses get automatic silver status in My Lowe's Rewards with free standard shipping, plus 10% off eligible purchases with no annual limit. It's one way we honor and give back to those who have served and still do. Learn more now at lowes.com/military. 10% discount can't be combined with another offer. Exclusions, terms, and conditions apply. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
I just got a fairly irritating text, having some issues on some other business fronts. Anyway, Muse like, well, yeah, we sit down, we thought about it, we diagrammed, and we really tried to create a system to maximize the players. And I was kind of asking about Eric Carlson. He gave me the generic answer, but it certainly, I think, is true. They had to take into account Eric Carlson, and let's be honest, how irrelevant he has at times been with the Penguins, how disappointing or how bad he's been. For 2 years, he really hadn't lived up to any of the hope, the expectations of when Kyle Dubas acquired the reigning Norris Trophy winner. Now, all of a sudden, I'm going to tell you, I don't think he will beat Quinn Hughes or Cale Makar for the Norris. But I'm starting to think he gets in that conversation again. He's been that good, actually. Starting to think, he's like at the back end of my 5 voting. If he keeps going like this, maybe he gets into the middle there and he gets, more people than just me starting to think about that possibility. By the way, here is the mall. On your left is the main Swedish arena. On the right is the practice arena, and then you got like that mall. That's towers of a mall that go off in both directions. It's like this huge complex. It's kind of cool. It might be bigger than the Mall of America. I mean, it's gigantic. Hey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and do all of that stuff while we're doing this as well. And here's it's a rink built in the 1950s, at least the practice rink. You can see how steep those steps are. I mean, that's not a camera angle thing. Just look how steep. You do not want to trip on those steps. You are going all the way down. All right, let me get to a couple more questions here, and then we'll double back into some of the other topics. I'm not going to do an hour and a half today. That's for sure. I want to actually get out and get to Old Town and get to, actually have some dinner, because that candy bar I've got here and the little bag of chips are all I've eaten today, and it's 6:30 local time. Cal says one of the major factors for the improved Penguins was getting rid of Mike Sullivan. You know what, Cal? I don't think you're wrong. I don't necessarily hold the vitriol that fans hold, although personally I can't say that I got along with Sullivan very well last season. I felt like he was, I felt like I was in his doghouse, and no matter what I asked or which way I went, I was getting kind of, I was getting the crap sandwich from the coach. So, but I never hold that against anybody. There have been some players who've been crappy with me or didn't want to talk to me because, I ask some hard questions sometimes, and I don't hold that against anybody in my analysis. You can be the worst human being to me. If you play well, I say you play well. If you played bad, I'm going to say you played bad, and I'm not going to exacerbate or accelerate any of my analysis. Even if you're good to us, like Alex Nedeljkovic, let's say, I wasn't going to overly inflate his tires. So, part of getting rid of Mike Sullivan, and the players have indirectly talked about this, is now everyone's coming to the rink dialed in, trying to learn the system, kind of enthused. It's something new, and it's not something that is distasteful. They're seeing how it benefits and impacts them, and there is a new voice. There's a guy who's at the rink all day long, willing to watch video with them, willing to break down differences and nuances that, go well beyond the basics. Now, Mike Sullivan, widely regarded as one of the best tactical coaches and a motivator, so take nothing away from him. But it's just different, and I think Muse really dialed into the team when he created the system. I think it's perfectly aligned for the roster, and it doesn't hurt. You got all this new blood on the roster too. So not only does that new blood come in with the new blood at the top, so you've got just kind of a washing away of 3 seasons of failure. You put a guy like Justin Brazeau in a position to succeed, well, that, it only empowers more people. And I think there was just an enthusiasm from the early success that multiplied. So Cal also follows up, hey, Dan, chug a few more brewskis and this chat will be a hoot. Oh, you have no idea. Although these heavy lagers, I don't get impaired. I get foggy. Like IPAs and heavy lagers, IPAs give me an awful headache, so I can't drink those. But like these heavy lagers I love, but it's just like, I don't get drunk, unfortunately. I get foggy. All right, let's go to Sergey. You've certainly been a gloomy Gus the past few weeks, as if you were expecting them to crash back to earth. Yeah, it's not always pretty. Just enjoy it, man. Listen, I give it to you straight. They played really well in some games and lost, and they played terribly in one. What do you want me to say? I am not a fan. It's not my job to enjoy wins and losses. It's my job to tell you the wins and losses, the why, how, what, where, and really dig into it. I'm not a YouTube I'm not a YouTuber. I'm not an influencer. I'm not a fanboy. My job is actually to report and to analyze on this stuff. All right, Drizzy. Is Letang still one of the best 6 defensemen? Isn't he and Dumba sort of the same or similar players? Sit him down and call it load management. I do think that's a possibility sooner than later. I really do. And it would be, I think, I'm sure it'd be a tough conversation. And Dan Muse would have to be out in front of it. Quite frankly, they might do well to just say Chris Letang is day-to-day if they have a bit of a break in the schedule and play Dumba so it doesn't come off as a healthy scratch. Save face all around. I'm not gonna say Letang isn't one of the best 6 defensemen because he is better than Matt Dumba probably, but yeah, he could use a break. Corby 2191. Well, we'll just go with Corby. Hey Dan, not sure if you know how much or know much about the prospect Mikhail Ilyin. Well, I met him. We talked to him in July. I got a good firsthand look at him, although his travel schedule got just mucked up beyond belief. So he arrived at rookie camp a day late, jet lagged, exhausted, just kind of beat up from the entire experience. I think it was almost like 40 hours it took from Russia to Pittsburgh. And there was a detour here. I think the detour might have been through Stockholm or Helsinki that wasn't planned, and it was an ordeal. So we didn't get to see his best. But yeah, the Penguins were certainly willing to go to the expense and the trouble to bring him to Pittsburgh for a couple of days. And he will, by plan, I think, be in the organization next year. Putin willing. Anyway, Ilyin has 19 points in 25 KHL games as a 20-year-old. Is there much projection or any organizational expectations for this kid? Yeah, I think there are some expectations that he, has talent and has potential. You don't go to that trouble for a guy you think is a borderline, AHL player. You don't go to that trouble for a future Wheeling Nailer. All respect to the Wheeling Nailers. Yes, but I also don't think the Penguins set numbers like you might be thinking. They have got a state-of-the-art player science program. And I mean, they are devoting and investing heavily into the player science. Everything from like the minutia in skating strides to shots and gameplay. They are really going all out to find every possible competitive advantage. Go back to what we talked about over the summer, that Kyle Dubas was so proud that they got an extra 12% out of Joona Koppanen's skating. And I forget who he was. He referenced that in relation to helping somebody else as well. Regardless of who that, who was the other person he was talking about, yeah, the Penguins are really doing a lot to get everything out of prospects and veterans and so forth. Yes. Yes, they do have some expectations for Mikhail Ilyin. Took me forever to explain that, but hopefully I dropped some knowledge that helps with your context as well. Big Joe, I know it's early. Oh, you're giving me the Dan Muse answer. Well, it's early. But do you think Muse can be more than just a developmental coach? He seems to be able to adapt to his players so far. Yes, Dan Muse is coaching his butt off. They are winning games. There is a system designed for the players to be successful, not just the star players, but he's finding a way. Every button he's pushing is succeeding. Justin Brazeau and and Parker Wotherspoon and Ryan Shea and even the third liners, even the fourth liners. Look at how well Connor Dewar, Blake Lizotte, and Nola Chari were playing. I mean, they were pretty fantastic until Achari got hurt. And even if they put, let's say, Kapanen on that line, or if it was Philip Hollander for a while, it was all good stuff. So, yeah, listen, Dan Muse never saw himself as a developmental coach. Maybe we put that label on him, like, oh, okay, you bring him in, you transition for a couple of years, but it goes it's worth noting here, the big picture. The Penguins aren't really in transition. They've added a lot of new players on kind of show-me deals, but the core of the team, still the exact same. Let's go, Drizzy, I've given you a hat trick. Okay, this is the last one I'll go to you on Drizzy here because I see Ben Kindle. Is Kindle better served back at his third-line center spot? Maybe Heinen or Koivunen a better fit on Crosby's wing, and Hayes makes them look slow when he's on the ice. Okay, the Hayes thing is obviously a kind of a unconnected rejoinder there. I don't need to get into that. Koivunen is not playing great hockey in a lot of situations this year. He was terrible on Crosby's line, and it's because he was too disconnected from the play. This might be a case where a player was better in Mike Sullivan's stretch system and not so good in Dan Muse's tight, connected sort of offensive pack mentality. Because he's been, his last week, 2 weeks, or 10 days anyway, have been exceedingly much, much better than the first couple of games this season when he was brutal. Even when they first brought him back, some of his games were just bad. He's getting better. He's getting some traction, but he still is not great with staying close. He's not great with the tight puck support that is part of Dan Muse's system. So he's been much better with Ben Kindle than he has with Sidney Crosby. That's for absolute sure. No, I absolutely think it's better for Kindle's long-term development to spend most of his time as the third-line center, not as a winger to Sidney Crosby. Because think of how many times we've talked about Crosby wingers. That's Sidney Crosby's line. He's driving it. He's dictating it. You're playing around Sidney Crosby. And Ben Kindle has the ability to play Ben Kindle's game. I think if center is his natural position, and you view him long-term for the next 10 or 15 years as a center, then I think it's certainly better for him to play third-line center. That does not mean, however, that if you're behind or late in a period, some offensive zone chances, you don't stack the line and put Kindle beside Crosby or Kindle beside Malkin or whatever the case may be. I think that's reasonable, and we've seen Dan Muse do that a lot. You see him really going back to that sort of sit down. I hate to say this, trigger warning. Goes back to a lot of Dan Bylsma's thinking. Just to jumpstart the team in the middle of a period, you'd see the two-headed monster. Well, you can do the same thing with Ben Kindle, make it a three-headed monster, and do all of those sorts of fun things when you're jumpstarting the team. Muse really likes, especially in the second period. There always seems to be a bit of a lull in the middle of the game, at which point Muse has become fond of juggling his lines for like 2 shifts, and that's it. So, you can get Kindle some time with Crosby and more offensive opportunities in those ways while still letting him grasp the NHL game at center. I shudder to think how good he's going to be when he learns even more. This kid is a sponge already. All right, let's go to John, what's it say? John D. Dowski. Hey, Dan. Hair looks great today. What little I've got left, I suppose. I was wondering, do I ever get to know how players feel when they get sent down? Yes. How do they stop from feeling too down? You know what? I just talked with Ryan Graves about all of that, and I did that after the morning? No, it wouldn't have been after the morning skate in New Jersey. I guess, after the game in New Jersey, because that's when he scored the goal off Andre Palat's face, chest, something.
At Lowe's, this Veterans Day and every day, verified military members, veterans, and their spouses get automatic silver status in My Lowe's Rewards with free standard shipping, plus 10% off eligible purchases with no annual limit. It's one way we honor and give back to those who have served and still do. Learn more now at lowes.com/military. 10% discount can't be combined with another offer. Exclusions, terms, and conditions apply. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.